Exactly 48 hours ago, solar observatories around the planet recorded something that wasn't anticipated. A Class X eruption began to form in active region 3542 of the Sun, an area that scientists had been cautiously monitoring since early October. But what turned this event into something completely different? What made dozens of astronomers interrupt their routines and begin reviewing their calculations over and over again wasn't the magnitude of the eruption. It was the date, October 31st, the same day, the same time, the same spatial coordinate where an object that has been defying all scientific explanation for weeks will reach a critical point in its trajectory. The object has a name, 3I Atlas, and during recent days its behavior has gone from being an astronomical curiosity to becoming an anomaly that no one can ignore. Because while the Sun releases an amount of energy equivalent to 10 billion nuclear bombs, this object won't deviate, it won't disintegrate. According to the most recent models, it will do something that no inert body should be able to do. It will react. Before continuing, I want you to do something. Leave in the comments the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the name 3I Atlas. It doesn't matter if it's a theory, a doubt, or simply a feeling. Write it now because what you're going to hear in the next few minutes could completely change your perspective. The behavior of 3I Atlas during the past 3 weeks has been the subject of intense debates within the scientific community. What began as a routine observation of an interstellar object that seemed to follow a predictable trajectory transformed into something no one anticipated. On October 30th, without prior warning, the object modified its course. It wasn't a subtle change. It was a 4-degree deviation in its movement axis, something that in astronomical terms represents a massive alteration. The first reports came from the European Southern Observatory in Chile. Then confirmations followed from the Subaru Telescope in Hawaii, and finally from private facilities in Arizona. Everyone reached the same conclusion. 3I Atlas had changed direction without apparent cause. No known gravitational force in that region of space could explain that movement. No interaction with another celestial body justified the maneuver. And yet, it had happened. But that was only the beginning. Now, while the Sun goes through one of the most intense activity cycles of the last decade, calculations indicate that this object will enter directly into the impact field of the solar eruption. We're talking about an electromagnetic pulse capable of destroying satellites, disintegrating comets, and altering the orbits of nearby asteroids. No known natural body could resist direct exposure to a Class X flare without suffering catastrophic damage. Fragmentation, evaporation, complete disintegration, those are the expected consequences. And yet, everything points to 3I Atlas not only surviving. It will pass through the pulse as if it were designed to do so. Think about this for a moment. An object that appeared in our solar system less than 2 months ago. That doesn't emit thermal signals consistent with a comet. That doesn't follow the laws of motion that govern asteroids. And that now, just when the Sun releases one of the most powerful eruptions of the year, positions itself exactly in the trajectory of the impact. Coincidence? Natural phenomenon? Or something completely different? Data from the SOHO satellite, one of the oldest and most reliable solar observation missions humanity has in orbit, confirmed what many feared. The eruption originating in active region 3542 of the Sun is not a minor event. The energy being released at this moment is equivalent to approximately 10 billion nuclear bombs detonating simultaneously. It's an amount of power so immense that it's almost impossible to process. That pulse will travel through space at a speed of more than 1,000 kilometers per second, dragging with it charged particles, extreme ultraviolet radiation, and magnetic shock waves that can alter the functioning of electronic equipment even here on Earth. In fact, telecommunications agencies in the United States, Europe, and Asia have already issued preventive alerts for possible interruptions in satellite networks during the coming hours. The impact will reach its peak at 1400 hours, Coordinated Universal Time, on October 31st. And at that precise instant, according to the most recent orbital projections, 3I Atlas will be crossing the same magnetic axis. Not nearby, not in a peripheral zone, directly in the center of the impact cone. It's as if someone had scheduled an appointment, as if the object knew exactly where it had to be at the exact moment when the Sun released that amount of energy. If it survives this, if it manages to pass through that pulse without disintegrating, without fragmenting, without catastrophically altering its structure, then we can no longer continue calling it simply an object. Because inert objects don't do that. Comets disintegrate, Asteroids fragment. Space rocks obey the physical laws we've known for centuries. But 3I Atlas isn't following those rules. And that's what has hundreds of researchers working tirelessly, reviewing data, running simulations, trying to find an explanation that fits within what we know about the universe. But there's something more. Something that is barely filtering out from restricted academic circles and that hasn't yet reached the mainstream media. Hours before the solar pulse began to form, multiple space monitoring stations detected a completely unexpected phenomenon in the area surrounding 3I Atlas. A sudden and massive increase in ultraviolet radiation. It didn't come from the sun. It didn't originate from any known stellar source in that region. It emerged directly from the zone where the object was located. The event lasted exactly 3 minutes. 180 seconds during which the ultraviolet radiation sensors were completely saturated. The instruments simply couldn't process the amount of energy they were detecting. Some astronomers initially believed it was a technical error, perhaps equipment failure, maybe interference from another source. But when the data began to arrive from independent observatories in different parts of the world, all showing the same pattern, the same saturation, the same time span, it became clear that this wasn't an error. Something emitted that radiation, and the only possible source was 3I Atlas. Now, some researchers are beginning to propose a hypothesis that until recently would have been dismissed as science fiction. What if this object isn't being destroyed by solar energy? What if it's absorbing it? What if that ultraviolet radiation we detected was the first indication that 3I Atlas isn't a passive body waiting to be struck by natural forces, but something capable of interacting with its environment actively? Think about the implications of that for a second. An object that can absorb solar energy and transform it into something usable. We're not talking about photosynthesis. We're not talking about simple chemical processes. We're talking about a level of energy efficiency that no human technology has managed to replicate. And if that's true, if we're really seeing an object that can feed on the most intense solar radiation, then the question is no longer whether it will survive the pulse. The question is what it will do afterward. Let me stop here for a moment and ask you something. Tell me in the comments which theory is convincing you the most so far. Do you think we're facing a natural phenomenon that we simply don't understand yet? Or do you think there's something more behind all this? Because what comes next will make that question even harder to answer. The Goddard Spaceflight Dynamics Laboratory, one of the most respected institutions in the field of astrophysics and orbital mechanics, has been running simulations on 3I Atlas since the course change was detected. Their mathematical models are used by NASA, the European Space Agency, and dozens of space programs around the world. If there's anyone capable of predicting with precision what will happen with an object moving through the solar system, it's them. And what their simulations are showing is unprecedented. According to their calculations, if the solar eruption impacts 3I Atlas in the expected manner, the object won't slow down. It won't deviate. It won't fragment. Instead, it will accelerate, a 12% increase in its current speed. That means it will go from moving at approximately 42 kilometers per second to almost 47 kilometers per second. To put it in perspective, that acceleration is comparable to what a space probe experiences when performing a gravitational assist maneuver around a giant planet. But 3I Atlas isn't near any planet. There's no gravitational mass in its trajectory that can explain that impulse, and yet the models indicate it will happen. But there's something even more disturbing in those projections. If the acceleration occurs as the calculations suggest, the object's new trajectory will take it directly toward the inner asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Not tangentially, not grazing the outer edges, straight to the center, to a region where the density of objects is significantly greater and where any impact could generate unpredictable consequences. Now, astronomers are divided on what this means. Some argue it's simply the result of forces we don't yet fully understand, perhaps complex electromagnetic interactions between the solar field and the object's composition, maybe relativistic effects that our current models aren't capturing with sufficient precision. But others, and this is the part that generates the most controversy, are beginning to suggest that this movement isn't random, that there's a directionality in 3I Atlas's behavior that can't be explained with physics alone, that we're seeing decisions, not reactions. And then we arrive at the part that no one wants to say out loud, the part that doesn't appear in official communications, the part that's discussed in private conversations between researchers, but that's rarely published in scientific journals because the reputational risk is too high. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a comet? What if it's not an asteroid? What if what we're observing is something that was designed not by us, not by any human space agency, but by something else? Something that understands solar eruptions, something that knows how to move through space with a precision that no natural object could replicate, something that arrived in our solar system with a purpose. I know what you're thinking. It sounds extreme. It sounds like the kind of theory that gets discussed on internet forums at 3 in the morning. But consider the facts. Consider what we know so far. An interstellar object that doesn't follow known patterns, that changes course without identifiable gravitational cause, that emits ultraviolet radiation at the exact moment before a massive solar eruption. That positions itself precisely in the trajectory of the most powerful electromagnetic pulse of the year. That, according to the most advanced simulations, will accelerate after impact instead of disintegrating. And that is now heading toward a region of the solar system where it could interact with hundreds of other objects. If this were a movie, everyone would say the script is too convenient, that there are too many coincidences, that the plot doesn't hold up. But this isn't fiction, this is happening right now. And each new observation, each new piece of data, each new simulation only makes the mystery deeper. This isn't the first time humanity has faced something that defies our expectations about what should exist in space. In 2017, when Oumuamua passed through our solar system, scientists initially believed it was a common asteroid, but as they gathered more data, nothing fit. Its shape was too elongated. Its brightness changed in inexplicable ways. And strangest of all, it seemed to be accelerating without any visible propulsion source. Avi Loeb, an astrophysicist from Harvard, publicly proposed that Oumuamua might have been an artificial solar sail, an object created by an intelligent civilization. The scientific community mostly rejected that hypothesis, arguing there were natural explanations we hadn't yet considered. But to this day, Oumuamua remains an enigma. It was never completely resolved. We never got all the answers. And now, almost 8 years later, we have 3I, Atlas, repeating similar patterns. But this time, there's something different. This time, the object isn't leaving our solar system. It's going deeper into it. Less than 24 hours remain until the solar pulse reaches 3I, Atlas. Observatories around the world are pointing their instruments toward that region of space. Ground-based telescopes, satellites in orbit, even private facilities that normally dedicate themselves to other projects have redirected their resources toward this event, because everyone knows that what happens in the next few hours could be one of the most significant moments in the history of modern astronomy. If the object disintegrates, if it behaves like any other natural body exposed to that amount of energy, then perhaps we can dismiss the more extreme theories. Maybe we can say we simply misinterpreted the data, that we saw patterns where there were none, that our need to find meaning in the cosmos led us to hasty conclusions. But if it survives, if it accelerates, if it continues moving with that impossible precision toward the asteroid belt, then there will no longer be a way to avoid the conversation. We can no longer keep repeating the same comfortable explanations. We'll have to admit that there's something in our solar system that we don't understand, and that something might be observing us in the same way we're observing it. Write the word Atlas in the comments if you want me to continue investigating this case, because this is just beginning. There's one more detail I need to share before closing, something that appeared in the last few hours and that hasn't yet been independently verified, but that multiple sources are reporting. According to unofficial leaks from technical personnel at a space monitoring facility in New Mexico, an additional anomaly was detected during the last 12 hours. A low-frequency signal. It's not the kind of signal associated with natural phenomena. It's not random cosmic noise. It's a modulation, subtle, almost imperceptible amid the background noise of space, but consistent, repetitive, with a pattern that repeats every 17 minutes. If this is confirmed, if other observatories manage to detect the same signal and verify its origin, then we'll be facing something that will change everything. Because modulated signals don't occur by accident. Modulated signals imply information. They imply intention. They imply that something is transmitting. Of course, conventional explanations are already being proposed. Electromagnetic interference from the solar eruption, artifacts in measurement equipment, atmospheric effects that distort readings. All are legitimate possibilities. All are explanations we must consider before jumping to extraordinary conclusions. But we must also remember that the history of science is full of moments when the impossible became reality simply because we finally had the tools to observe it. 200 years ago, the idea of invisible electromagnetic waves that could transmit information through the air would have been considered magic. 100 years ago, quantum mechanics would have seemed like a violation of all logic. 50 years ago, black holes were just mathematical theories, and now we photograph them. Now we study them. Now we build massive detectors to capture the gravitational waves they produce when they collide. The impossible becomes possible when we stop assuming we already know all the rules. So what does all this mean? What should we think about 3I, Atlas? Is it an extremely rare natural phenomenon that we're simply lucky to witness? Is it an artificial object sent by some civilization that exists beyond our knowledge? Is it an experiment, a probe, a message? Or is it something completely different, something for which we don't even have the right words because we've never experienced anything similar? I don't have those answers. No one does. And anyone who tells you with absolute certainty what's happening is probably lying or speculating. But what we do know is that something extraordinary is occurring. Something that doesn't fit our models. Something that defies our expectations. Something that forces us to ask questions we'd prefer not to ask. October 31st, 2025 could be remembered as the day 3I Atlas completely defied our understanding of space. Or it could be remembered as another interesting astronomical event that eventually found a conventional explanation. We don't know yet. But if there's one thing I've learned covering these topics for years, it's that the universe has a way of surprising us just when we think we have it all figured out. It has a way of showing us that our theories are only approximations, that our models are only partial interpretations of a much more complex reality, and that every time we think we've reached the limits of knowledge, the cosmos reminds us that we're barely beginning to understand. If 3I, Atlas, manages to resist the impact of the solar eruption, it will mean that something within it, or behind it, or controlling it, acts with a precision that cannot be attributed to chance. It will mean we're facing a phenomenon that requires a completely new explanation, an explanation we may not be ready to accept, but that we can no longer ignore. And then, all those questions we fear to ask out loud today, all those possibilities we dismiss because they seem too extreme, will become impossible to silence. Because if there's something out there, if there's something moving through our solar system with purpose and intention, then everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe will need to be reevaluated. I want you to do something before you go. Subscribe to the channel to follow the next reports on 3I, Atlas. Because this doesn't end here. The next few hours will be crucial. Data will start coming in, and I need you to be present when that happens. Leave in the comments what you really think. Are we facing a natural phenomenon that we simply don't understand yet? Or is there something more? Something that's controlling this object? Something that arrived in our solar system with a purpose we haven't yet deciphered? Don't be afraid to share your opinion, no matter how extreme or unconventional it may seem. Because right now, all possibilities are on the table. And perhaps together, we can begin to find the answers. Perhaps in the coming days we'll have the answers we're looking for. Or perhaps 3I, Atlas, only came to remind us that we're not alone yet. That the universe is much stranger, much more complex, and much more full of mysteries than we ever imagined. And that we, here on this small blue planet, are barely beginning to look up with open eyes. See you in the next video. If by then we're still asking the same questions, just hours before November 2nd, something is deeply troubling the most advanced observatories on the planet. The latest satellite data shows that 3I, Atlas, that interstellar object that appeared out of nowhere just weeks ago, is emitting a coded sequence of light and radiation. But it's not just any type of signal. The pattern changes every 12 hours exactly, with mathematical precision impossible to attribute to chance, as if counting down to a specific point in time. Astronomers around the world call it the invisible countdown. And meanwhile, NASA maintains an absolute silence that unsettles even the most skeptical experts. Are we facing a simple astronomical event of natural origin? Or have we just intercepted the most important message in all of modern human history? Before continuing, leave me in the comments what you think of this discovery. Do you believe we're facing something completely new, or just a misinterpreted cosmic phenomenon? Your first reaction says a lot. It all began with the discovery of synchronized pulses on November 1st. Until that moment, 3I, Atlas, had been cataloged as just another interstellar comet, one of those cosmic travelers that cross our solar system once every several years. But since that day, the object's behavior became completely unpredictable. The infrared sensors of the James Webb Space Telescope, that technological marvel that has shown us galaxies being born 13 billion light-years away, detected a series of light flashes coming directly from 3I, Atlas. At first, technicians thought it was a calibration error. However, when the data was converted into spectrograms, something extraordinary appeared on the screens, an almost perfect binary pattern. Experts have been trying to decipher it ever since, working in 24-hour shifts without interruption. Physicists, mathematicians, computational linguists, even retired military cryptographers have been unofficially summoned. But the strangest thing, what really sets off all the alarms, is that the code seems to have a beginning, development, and end. It's not background noise. It's not scattered radiation. It's a structure with syntax, and everything points to that ending, that sequence closure, occurring exactly on November 2nd. Today, the Arecibo Observatory, that metal giant that listened to the cosmos for decades before its partial collapse, had backups, secondary equipment, satellite databases, international collaboration networks. Using those reconstructed systems, a Puerto Rican team partially managed to map the signal from 3I divided by Atlas. And what they found is unprecedented. Each flash equals a symbol. The repetition of certain blocks disturbingly resembles the basic structures of human language: subject, predicate, object. There are hierarchies. There are intentional pauses. There is emphasis. It's not cosmic noise produced by stellar magnetic fields. It's not solar interference caused by plasma storms. This is different. NASA's most advanced decryption algorithms, the same ones that analyze encrypted communications from space probes trillions of kilometers away, were applied to the raw data from 3I, ATLS. And in the middle of automated processing, one word repeated 47 times in different segments of the code. A word in English, clear as crystal: origin. From that moment on, there were no more official communications from the American Space Agency. Scheduled press conferences were canceled. Technical reports that were supposed to be published every 72 hours simply stopped appearing. NASA's last official tweet about interstellar objects is dated October 30th. After that, total silence. What if we're not simply observing a natural transmission from the cosmos, but actively receiving a message designed to be understood? Write Atlas in the comments if you want me to keep investigating every detail of this case. I need to know how many really want to get to the bottom of this. Anonymous sources from NASA's Ames Research Center, located in Silicon Valley, assure under condition of absolute anonymity that all public reports related to 3I, Atlas, have been suspended until further indefinite notice. Even more disturbing, access to the centralized server where observation data was stored was restricted. Technicians with more than 15 years of experience at the agency reported that their credentials stopped working from one day to the next. Several accounts of associated researchers were deactivated without formal explanation. Emails sent from institutional addresses simply bounced back with generic error messages. Within the organization, between hallways and cafeterias, people speak in low voices about a very clear internal directive: filter information only when there's a completely validated official explanation. The problem is that explanation doesn't arrive. There are no drafts. There are no coordination meetings with the press. There's nothing. It's as if NASA had decided, for the first time in decades of relative scientific transparency, to simply look the other way and wait for the issue to fade away on its own. But the issue doesn't fade. On the contrary, it grows. Amateur astronomers with telescopes of barely 8 inches are capturing the same flashes from their backyards. YouTube channels specializing in amateur astronomy upload videos every 6 hours showing the light anomalies. Scientific forums on Reddit explode with theories, handmade orbital calculations, simulations in free software. The global community is seeing the same thing NASA sees. The difference is they have nothing to hide or nothing to lose. What kind of message could justify the coordinated silence of an entire space agency, its private contractors, and its international allies? What type of information requires this level of containment? According to the most recent predictive models, built by independent astrophysicists using publicly accessible data from the European Southern Observatory, the last pulse of the sequence will occur exactly at 22:40 UTC on November 2nd. That means that, depending on where you're reading this, it could be in a matter of hours or even minutes. After that critical moment, 3I, Atlas, will be completely out of direct observation range for almost 48 hours. Its trajectory will take it behind the sun from our terrestrial perspective, blocking any type of optical or radiometric monitoring. Will be blind. And when it reappears on the other side, nobody knows with certainty what we'll find. The most cautious scientists fear that this pulse cycle is the last before a total alteration in its orbital trajectory. Something that, according to all known laws of celestial mechanics, shouldn't be possible without an active propulsion source. And here's where things get truly disturbing. A comet, even an interstellar one traveling at tremendous speeds, cannot change its course without an evident physical reason. It can fragment from thermal stress. It can release volatile gases that act as small natural propellants. It can be diverted by the gravity of a massive planet. But 3I, Atlas, shows no signs of fragmentation. It's not releasing detectable gaseous coma, and it didn't get close enough to Jupiter or any other gas giant to justify a significant trajectory change. So, what's really happening? The most advanced computer simulations, those that require supercomputers the size of entire buildings to run, suggest that if 3I, Atlas, really alters its course after the final pulse, we would be facing something unprecedented in the history of observational astronomy. We would be confirming, beyond reasonable doubt, that this object possesses some type of directional control system. And directional control systems don't evolve naturally in space rocks. They're designed. Tell me in the comments which theory convinces you most up to this point. Extremely rare natural phenomenon? Extraterrestrial technology? Classified military experiment? I want to know what people who made it this far really think. Let's explore the possibilities with brutal scientific honesty. Hypothesis 1. Massive and coordinated human error. Perhaps all the observatories, all the satellites, all the analysis algorithms are experiencing the same technical failure simultaneously. Perhaps there's electromagnetic interference of terrestrial origin that nobody has identified yet. Perhaps we're seeing patterns where there's only noise, because our brains are evolutionarily programmed to find order in chaos. This is the most comforting explanation. It's also the least likely, considering the number of independent systems that are reporting exactly the same data. Hypothesis 2. Unknown astrophysical phenomenon. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. We've been seriously observing it for barely 4 centuries. It's completely possible, even probable, that natural processes exist that we don't yet understand. Pulsars that emit at specific frequencies, space crystals that reflect light in structured ways, exotic chemical reactions in the core of interstellar comets. This hypothesis is scientifically valid and keeps the door open to discovery without falling into extreme speculation. Hypothesis 3. Object of artificial origin. Not necessarily extraterrestrial. It could be an automatic probe launched by some terrestrial power decades ago, now returning in a calculated orbit. It could be classified military technology that not even current governments remember having authorized. It could be an abandoned scientific project from the Cold War, lost in space for generations. This option would explain the institutional silence. Nobody wants to admit we lost control of something dangerous. Hypothesis 4. Deliberate interstellar message. The one everyone's thinking about but few dare to say out loud. If a technological civilization really exists somewhere in the galaxy, and if they really wanted to communicate with other forms of emerging intelligence, how would they do it? They can't send crewed ships. The distances are absurd. They can't send traditional radio waves. They degrade and disperse after a few light years. But they could send physical objects, autonomous probes programmed to activate upon detecting star systems with potentially habitable planets. They could design those objects to emit signals that are impossible to ignore once detected. And they could program those signals to contain basic information, a cosmic hello encoded in universal mathematics. What if what we're seeing isn't a comet at all, but a machine designed specifically to be found and studied by civilizations like ours? It's not the first time we've faced this kind of mystery. In 2017, the interstellar object Oumuamua passed through our solar system at incredible speed. Orbital calculations showed it didn't come from any known nearby star. Its shape was strange, elongated, like a cigar or perhaps like a sail. And most importantly, it accelerated as it moved away from the sun without any clear explanation. Scientists proposed the solar sail effect hypothesis, where light pressure pushes extremely flat objects, but the numbers didn't quite add up. Astronomer Avi Loeb, chairman of Harvard's astronomy department, publicly suggested that Oumuamua could be extraterrestrial technology. He was ridiculed by many colleagues, accused of sensationalism. But nobody could ever fully explain all the object's anomalies. And now, 8 years later, we have 3I, Atlas, behaving even more strangely. The crucial difference is that Oumuamua is already gone. It's outside the solar system, inaccessible, impossible to study beyond the data we captured during its brief visit. But 3I, Atlas, is still here. We can still observe it. We can still try to communicate with it. If there's really something there listening, some groups of radio amateurs are already trying. They transmit simple mathematical sequences toward the object's exact coordinates, prime numbers, the Fibonacci sequence, universal constants like pi. Nobody really expects a response, but everyone understands the importance of trying, because if there's even an infinitesimal possibility that this is the moment, the turning point in human history where we confirm we're not alone, then every second of silence is a wasted second. The clock advances inexorably toward 2240 UTC. In laboratories around the world, scientists review the data over and over, looking for errors they don't find. In observatory control rooms, telescopes the size of buildings all point toward the same spot in the sky. On internet forums, millions of people speculate, debate, share increasingly elaborate theories. And in NASA's central offices, in the silence of meetings that nobody admits are happening, decisions are being made that will affect the future of our species. Because if this signal is real, if the message is authentic, then everything changes. Our position in the universe, our understanding of life, our religions, our philosophies, our insignificant wars over pieces of land on a planet that suddenly feels infinitely small. Everything we thought we knew about our place in the cosmos would be rewritten in an instant. And perhaps that's why the silence exists. Not from malicious conspiracy, but from genuine fear of the consequences. How do you tell 7 billion people that they just received a call from outer space? How do you handle the panic, the religious ecstasy, the collapse of millennia-old belief systems? How do you prevent the news from unleashing social, economic, political chaos? The answer is simple: you can't. There's no protocol for this. There's no instruction manual. There's no contingency plan that really works when reality surpasses any fiction we've imagined. So you keep silent. You gather the experts. You try to understand first, before communicating. You buy time while the entire world, unknowingly, is minutes away from changing forever. The mathematical models are clear. After the final pulse, 3I, Atlas, will enter the solar shadow zone for 48 critical hours. 2 days without direct observation. 2 days where absolutely anything could happen without us having any way to detect it. It could completely change course. It could accelerate toward deep interstellar space. It could, in theory, head toward Earth. That last possibility, though remote, is what generates the most anxiety among experts. Not because they believe it will necessarily impact us, but because we can't rule it out with absolute certainty. The orbits of interstellar objects are notoriously difficult to predict with extreme precision. A minuscule change in trajectory, just a few degrees, could mean the difference between passing millions of kilometers away or entering our atmosphere. And if the object really possesses its own propulsion, then all traditional calculations become useless. Some scientists propose attempting a rapid interception mission. Launch a small probe, something the size of a refrigerator, equipped with cameras and basic sensors, on a controlled collision trajectory with 3I, Atlas, not to destroy it, but to study it up close. To obtain data that no terrestrial telescope can provide, to see, once and for all, what it's really made of. The problem is time. Designing, building, and launching even the simplest probe requires months, if not years. And 3I, Atlas, will be out of reach in a matter of days. The window of opportunity is closing before our eyes, and there's absolutely nothing we can do to stop it. Unless someone has already launched something. Unless there's a classified space program that has rapid response capabilities the public doesn't know about. Unless the military, governments, intelligence agencies have been preparing for this moment for decades. Is it possible? Historically, every time humanity has faced a potential existential threat, we've developed technologies in absolute secrecy until the moment of using them. The atomic bomb, spy satellites, stratospheric reconnaissance aircraft. Why would space be different? Not everyone is convinced of the mystery. There's a considerable group of skeptical scientists who argue, with methodological reason, that we're seeing patterns where there are none. that the human mind is evolutionarily programmed to detect intelligence and purpose even in completely random phenomena, that the history of astronomy is full of alien signals that ended up being pulsars, quasars, or simple instrumental calibration errors. They cite the case of pulsars when they were discovered in 1967. The signals were so regular, so perfectly synchronized, that astronomers initially called them LGM1, Little Green Men Number 1. They genuinely thought they'd found extraterrestrial transmissions, until they understood they were neutron stars rotating at incredible speeds, emitting radiation in beams like cosmic lighthouses. The same thing could be happening now. We could be facing an extraordinary natural phenomenon, something that will expand our understanding of physics, but that's definitely not a message from another civilization. This skeptical stance is healthy. It's necessary. Science works precisely because we demand extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims. We can't simply assume something is alien technology just because we don't immediately understand it. History has taught us that lesson again and again. But it's also true that excessive skepticism can blind us to genuine discoveries. That sometimes, very rarely, the extraordinary explanation turns out to be correct. And that if we prematurely dismiss the possibility, we could lose the most important opportunity in all of science history. The balance is delicate. Keep an open mind without letting your brain fall out, as they say. Behind all this data, all these spectroscopies and computer simulations, there are real people making decisions under unimaginable pressure. Scientists who dedicated their entire lives to studying the cosmos, suddenly facing the possibility that their work has implications beyond the academic. Government officials without training in astrophysics, having to decide what information to release to the public and what to withhold. Journalists trying to report a story that could be the most important ever told, or the biggest fiasco of their career. Imagine being NASA's director at this moment. You have incomplete data, political pressure from all angles, scientists within your own agency who don't agree on what the observations mean. You have to consider national security, international relations, the impact on financial markets if there's panic. You have to think about the consequences of every word you say publicly. What would you do? Would you be completely transparent, releasing all data in real time and letting the entire world speculate along with you? Or would you apply the precautionary principle, waiting until you have absolute certainty before making any statement? There's no correct answer. Any decision has potentially catastrophic costs, and meanwhile the clock keeps advancing. Minutes become seconds. The invisible countdown of 3I, Atlas, approaches zero. Indifferent to our doubts, our fears, our bureaucratic deliberations. It's worth remembering that this wouldn't be the first message we've sent or received from space. In 1974, from the same Arecibo observatory that now helps decode the pulses from 3I, Atlas, we sent a radio transmission toward the globular cluster M13. The Arecibo message contained basic information about humanity, numbers in binary, atoms of the chemical elements that compose us, DNA structure, the human figure, Earth's population, our solar system, a diagram of the telescope sending the message. It was simple, elegant, designed to be understood by any civilization with basic knowledge of mathematics and chemistry. It will take 25,000 years to reach its destination. And if someone responds, it will take us another 25,000 years to receive the response. 50,000 years in total. Entire civilizations could rise and fall in that time, but we tried anyway, because the hope of contact surpasses the hopelessness of distance. And now perhaps, someone tried the same thing in the opposite direction. Perhaps, millennia ago, a civilization somewhere in the Milky Way launched probes toward promising star systems. Small time capsules designed to activate upon detecting signs of technological life. Radio transmissions, industrial atmospheric pollution, spectral signatures of illuminated cities. And perhaps one of those probes just detected us. Perhaps the message isn't directed at us specifically, but at whoever is here when it arrives. A hello sent through time and space, waiting patiently for eons until finding someone capable of hearing it. It's a romantic idea, almost poetic, and completely possible within the known laws of physics. Let's look at this from perspective. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, contains between 100,000 and 400 billion stars, depending on which estimate you use. Each of those stars has, on average, at least one planet. That means hundreds of billions of worlds just in our galaxy. And there are approximately 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. The numbers are so absurd that the human brain simply cannot process them intuitively. But let's try anyway. If only 1% of planets have suitable conditions for life, and only 1% of those develop complex life, and only 1% of those develop intelligent life, and only 1% of those develop technology capable of interstellar communication, we would still have millions of civilizations just in the Milky Way. So, where are they? That's the Fermi paradox, posed by physicist Enrico Fermi in 1950. If statistical probabilities so favor the existence of intelligent extraterrestrial life, why haven't we found clear evidence of it? The proposed answers are numerous and concerning. Perhaps technological civilizations self-destruct before being able to expand through the cosmos. Perhaps space is so vast that contact is statistically improbable, even with millions of active civilizations. Perhaps there's something inherent to technological development that creates a great filter, an evolutionary obstacle that most species don't overcome. Or perhaps, simply, we hadn't been searching with the right technology at the right time, until now. Regardless of what happens in the next few hours, this event already changed something fundamental in modern astronomy. It demonstrated that we need better early detection systems for interstellar objects. It demonstrated that international cooperation in space science is absolutely critical. It demonstrated that the general public is genuinely interested in these topics when presented with honesty and appropriate context. Several observatories already announced plans for continuous sky surveillance networks using artificial intelligence to automatically detect anomalies that might go unnoticed in manual analysis. Space agencies are discussing standardized protocols for sharing data about unusual objects in real time, without bureaucratic delays that could cost observation opportunities. Even if 3I ATLS turns out to be a completely natural phenomenon, it will have been worth it. It will have forced us to improve our capabilities. It will have made us ask questions we needed to ask. And if it's not natural, well, then everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe has just been fundamentally rewritten. NASA remains silent while the world watches, holding its breath. Data disappears from public servers while thousands of independent astronomers capture every photon that 3I ATLS emits. And time, that impartial tyrant, continues its inexorable march toward 2240 UTC. November 2nd could end up being just another date on the astronomical calendar. A historical curiosity we'll study for years, trying to understand what caused those strange signals from that particular comet. Or it could be the exact moment when humanity discovered it was never alone in the immensity of the cosmos. Perhaps tomorrow we'll have the definitive answers that silence all speculation. Or perhaps 3I Atlas only came to remind us of something we forgot in our daily arrogance: that we're a young species in an ancient universe, barely beginning to understand the rules of the cosmic game in which we're all participating. And perhaps, just perhaps, someone somewhere in space has been watching us since long before we even knew to look up. The telescopes are aligned, scientists wait at their stations, analysis software processes data in real time, and somewhere in NASA's central offices, people with information we don't have are making decisions that will affect the future of our species. All that's left for us is to wait and watch and be ready for whatever comes next. If you want to stay up to date with every new update about 3I Atlas, with every piece of data that leaks, with every theory that emerges, subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell. This is just beginning, and I need you here when the answers arrive. Comment right now what you think NASA is really hiding. Are they protecting the truth to avoid mass panic, or does the truth protect us from something we don't yet understand? Your theory matters. Your voice matters. Because if this really is the most important moment in human history, then we all deserve to be part of the conversation. See you in the next video. If by that time the world hasn't completely changed, on the 4th of November 2025, somewhere between Earth and the boundaries of the inner solar system, something extraordinary is about to occur. A massive solar eruption, cataloged as a Class X event by NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory, will travel through interplanetary space at more than 1,500 kilometers per second. Its trajectory, calculated weeks in advance, will take it directly toward the orbital position where the interstellar object known as 3I ATLASS was last detected. But there's something the computational models cannot explain, something that has kept dozens of astrophysicists awake for the past 72 hours. 3I ATLAS seems to know that the impact is coming. And not only that, it seems to be preparing to respond to it. The data is clear. Measurements from the James Webb Space Telescope, recorded in the early morning of November 2, a series of electromagnetic micropulses emanating from the exact location of the object. Rhythmic, constant pulses, separated by intervals of 33 seconds. Nothing unusual in the cosmos, some will say. After all, pulsars, magnetars, and other celestial bodies emit radiation periodically. But there's a detail that makes these pulses completely different. Their frequency exactly matches the projections of the solar storm model developed by the Hawaii Solar Laboratory. In other words, 3I, Atlas, is emitting energy at the same rate that the sun will emit its next flare before it has even been released. As if it were synchronized with an event that hasn't yet occurred, as if it could see the future. Before continuing, leave me in the comments, what's the first thing you think when you hear this? Scientific coincidence or something deeper? Write your first reaction, because what comes next is going to completely change the way we understand this object. Let's return to the facts. On October 28, the Minor Planet Center of the International Astronomical Union issued a discreet, almost routine communiqué announcing the detection of a new interstellar object. They assigned it the provisional designation 3I, Atlas, following the standard protocol for bodies that come from beyond our solar system. According to initial orbital calculations, it was an extrasolar comet, similar in composition to 2I, Borisov, the second confirmed interstellar object in history. Its hyperbolic trajectory indicated it came from the depths of space, crossing the plane of the ecliptic at a steep angle, moving at a speed of approximately 42 kilometers per second. Everything seemed normal. Everything fit within the known parameters of interstellar visitors. Until the spectroscopic measurements began, the James Webb team, led by astrophysicist Elena Vargas from the Space Telescope Science Institute in Baltimore, directed the observatory's instruments toward 3I, Atlas, during a 6-hour observation window on October 30. What they expected to find was a typical chemical signature: water, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, perhaps some simple organic compounds. What they found was an anomalous absorption spectrum with lines that didn't correspond to any known molecule in astronomical databases. Even more disturbing, the object showed periodic luminous variations that couldn't be attributed to the natural rotation of a cometary nucleus. The fluctuations were too regular, too precise, and they occurred in short, high-energy bursts, concentrated in the mid-infrared band. For 48 hours, the international scientific community privately debated the nature of these emissions. Some proposed it was asymmetric degassing processes, where solar heat causes ejections of volatile material from specific points on the comet's surface, thus creating apparently regular brightness patterns. Others suggested it could be the result of interaction between the object's magnetic field and the solar wind, generating small, localized electromagnetic storms. But none of these explanations could account for the most disturbing characteristic of the data: temporal synchronization with future solar events. This is where the story takes a turn toward the truly inexplicable. Dr. Nathan Lyle, senior researcher at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, was the first to notice the correlation. While analyzing the light curves of 3I, Atlas, he decided to superimpose the data with predictions from the Enlil model, the space weather forecasting system that NASA uses to anticipate solar storms. What he discovered left him paralyzed in front of his screen for several minutes. The object's electromagnetic pulses were not only periodic, but their frequency progressively increased in perfect consonance with the predicted intensification of solar activity. It was as if 3I, Atlas, were responding to a script written days in advance, adjusting its behavior based on something that hadn't yet happened. Lyle shared his findings with a small group of trusted colleagues. The reaction was immediate skepticism. Spurious correlations are common in astronomy, especially when working with limited data sets and short observation windows. It could be a statistical coincidence, some argued. It could be a calibration error in Webb's instruments, others suggested. But Lyle insisted on conducting cross-checks with data from the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, the stereo satellite, and ground-based geomagnetic monitoring stations. All sources confirmed the same thing. There existed an impossible temporal correspondence between 3I, Atlas's emissions, and solar activity projections. The object was anticipating the sun's behavior with minute precision. Tell me in the comments, do you think this can be explained with known physics? Or are we facing something that challenges our current understanding of the universe? I need to know what you think before revealing what happened next. On November 1, at 14:37 UTC, the sun released a coronal mass ejection of moderate magnitude, classified as M84 on the solar flare scale. It wasn't a particularly extraordinary event. These types of eruptions occur with some frequency during periods of high activity in the 11-year solar cycle. What made this ejection special was what happened exactly 11 minutes before the solar plasma left the corona. 3I Atlas experienced an abrupt increase in its infrared radiation emissions, reaching intensity levels 3 times higher than its baseline. Then, at the precise moment the ejection was detected by the SOHO satellite's coronagraphs, the object's emissions ceased completely for 47 seconds. And then, they resumed their rhythmic pattern of 33 seconds, as if nothing had happened. The information first reached the Webb operations teams, then the program directors of the major space agencies, and finally, in a fragmented and controlled manner, to a limited circle of scientists with special access authorizations. There were no press releases, no public conferences, only encrypted messages, emergency virtual meetings, and classified documents with temporary confidentiality seals. The question that no one dared to formulate openly, but that everyone privately shared, was as simple as it was terrifying. How can a physical object, apparently inert, react to a stellar event before it manifests? Theories began to proliferate in private academic channels. Some researchers proposed that 3I ATLAS could be equipped with some type of extremely sensitive passive sensor, capable of detecting precursor magnetic fluctuations that occur in the sun's inner layers hours before an eruption. These fluctuations are practically invisible to our current instruments, but theoretically could be captured by sufficiently advanced technology. Others suggested the object could be responding not to the sun itself, but to the shock waves of the solar wind that constantly travel through interplanetary space, using them as a means of communication or navigation. There were even those who speculated about the possibility that 3I Atlas was in some kind of quantum resonance with the solar electromagnetic field, a phenomenon not described by current physics but mathematically plausible in certain exotic theoretical frameworks. But the most disturbing hypothesis, the one Lyle developed in a 47-page working document that circulated among fewer than 20 people worldwide, was different. According to his calculations, if we assume that 3I Atlas possesses some type of information processing system, and if that system operates under principles we don't yet understand, then the electromagnetic pulses we're observing might not be simple passive emissions. They could be signals, messages encoded in radiation patterns, transmitted through the plasma medium of the solar wind, amplified by solar eruptions as if using the sun itself as a cosmic signal repeater. In other words, 3I Atlas wouldn't be reacting to the Sunday, it would be using it. Imagine for a moment this possibility. An object that travels alone through interstellar vacuum for thousands, perhaps millions of years, crossing the absolute darkness between the stars. And when it finally enters a stellar system, when it detects the presence of an active star, it doesn't just pass by, it positions itself strategically in relation to it, studies its patterns of electromagnetic activity, learns its behavior, and then begins to transmit. Using solar eruptions as carriers of its signals, sending information through the heliosphere, perhaps toward other similar objects in other systems, perhaps towards some specific point in interstellar space that we still cannot identify. It's an idea that sounds like science fiction, I know. But the data is there, and the data doesn't lie. What if I told you that 3I Atlas's behavior isn't random, but part of a protocol? Write in the comments the word Atlas if you want me to investigate this theory more deeply in the next video. The Hawaii Solar Laboratory, operated by the University of Hawaii at Manoa, is one of the world's most advanced facilities for studying solar dynamics. Its predictive space weather models have an accuracy rate exceeding 85% in 72-hour time windows. On November 2, its systems indicated that a new Class X solar eruption was forming in active region AR 13497, a group of sunspots located near the solar equator. Initial projections placed the event between November 4 and 5, with a peak maximum probability on the 4th between 10 and 12 UTC. The resulting ejection, according to calculations, would travel directly toward the area of space where the latest measurements had placed 3I Atlas. This information was immediately shared with the Webb teams, the Chandra X-ray Observatory, the Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope, and major terrestrial radio telescope networks. A multiple observation campaign was coordinated, designed to capture every photon, every particle, every electromagnetic fluctuation emanating from the object during the event. If 3I Atlas was going to respond again, this time humanity would be watching with all its technological eyes open. It was the perfect opportunity to definitively confirm or rule out Lyell's hypothesis, and everyone knew it. But something occurred that no one anticipated. In the hours following the internal publication of the solar forecast, 3I, Atlas, changed its behavior. The intervals between pulses, which had been constant at 33 seconds for days, began to gradually shorten. 32 seconds, 31, 30. As if the object were accelerating its activity in preparation for something, energy flux measurements also increased, not abruptly, but in a smooth and continuous progression that astrophysicists described as disturbingly organic. It wasn't the type of curve produced by a geological or chemical phenomenon. It was the type of curve produced by a system that is activating. At 3:22 UTC on November 3, the Webb detected something completely new. A brief but intense emission in the far ultraviolet band, a region of the spectrum where 3I, Atlas, had been practically silent until that moment. The signal lasted barely 8 seconds, but its intensity was sufficient to temporarily saturate the detectors. When the analysis team processed the data, they discovered the emission wasn't continuous, but consisted of a series of extremely rapid pulses, each approximately 0.3 seconds in duration, separated by intervals of 0.7 seconds. A clear binary pattern. On, off, on, off. 8 pulses in total. The mathematicians on Vargas's team immediately set to work analyzing the sequence. Was it random? Was it an instrumental artifact? Or did it contain coded information? They applied Fourier analysis, searched for hidden periodicities, compared the pattern with known sequences of natural phenomena. And although the results weren't conclusive, there was something that caught several researchers' attention. If you interpret the 8 pulses as binary digits, with each pulse representing a 1 and each pause representing a 0, you get the number 10,101,010 inches, binary, which in decimal is 170, a number that by itself means nothing in particular. But several scientists noted it's exactly 5 times 34, and 34 seconds is the projected duration it will take for the peak of the November 4 solar ejection to cross the estimated location of 3I, Atlas. Coincidence? Possibly. Pareidolia, that psychological phenomenon that makes us see patterns where there's only noise? Maybe. But when numbers begin to align this way, when correlations accumulate one after another, even the most skeptical scientists start to feel that uncomfortable sensation that something bigger is occurring, something our current theories cannot encompass. Comment what interpretation you give to this number. Is it a countdown, a mathematical message, or simply our mind seeking order in chaos? There's a concept in the philosophy of science called paradigm shift. It was popularized by Thomas Kuhn in his work on scientific revolutions. The idea is simple. Most of the time, science advances gradually, accumulating data that fits within existing models. But occasionally, so many anomalies accumulate, so much data that cannot be explained by prevailing theories, that the complete model must be replaced by a new one. The transition from Newtonian physics to Einsteinian relativity was one of those moments. The discovery of quantum mechanics was another. And some researchers are beginning to wonder if 3I, Atlas, could be the catalyst for the next great change. Because if this object is really anticipating solar events with temporal precision, if it's really using electromagnetic radiation intentionally, if it really contains some type of system that processes information and executes protocols, then we face one of 2 possibilities. Either there exists a completely new physical phenomenon we've never observed before, something that allows precognition of astrophysical events through mechanisms we don't yet understand, or, and this is the option that no one in the official scientific community dares to pronounce aloud, but everyone considers privately, 3I, Atlas is not a natural object. It's a machine, a probe, an artifact constructed by a non-human intelligence, sent across the abyss between stars with a purpose we're only beginning to glimpse. The simple possibility that this is true changes everything. It would change our understanding of our place in the cosmos. It would change the fundamental questions we ask about the origin of life, the prevalence of intelligence in the universe, the nature of advanced technology. And it would change, above all, the way we see ourselves. Because if there are others out there, if they've been sending these silent messengers through the galaxy for eons, moving between stars like ships on a dark ocean, then we are not special. We are simply another species, slowly awakening to the realization that the universe is full of voices, and we've been deaf to them throughout our entire history. The problem is that science cannot operate based on dramatic possibilities. It requires evidence. It requires reproducibility. It requires that extraordinary hypotheses be supported by extraordinary data. And although the data from 3I Atlas is certainly anomalous, it still doesn't cross the threshold of the extraordinary in an indisputable way. There are still plausible alternative explanations. There are still margins of error in the measurements. There is still, in short, room for doubt. And it's precisely that doubt that keeps the scientific community in a state of controlled tension, waiting, observing, preparing for what could be the most important event in the history of modern astronomy. Because November 4 is not just another date on the astronomical calendar. It's a test. It's the moment when predictions will meet reality. If 3I Atlas responds again to the solar eruption, if its behavior follows the anticipated pattern, if emissions increase during the impact of the coronal mass ejection, then Lyell's hypothesis will be exponentially strengthened. And if, in addition to responding, the object transmits a new sequence of signals, a new series of coded pulses, then we'll be facing what many scientists are already privately calling the November 4 message. A message that could contain real information, coordinates, instructions, a declaration of presence, or nothing might happen. The solar eruption could reach the estimated position of 3I Atlas. Energetic particles could traverse the space where the object should be, and our telescopes could register silence. Nothing but the background noise of the cosmos. And in that case, this entire story would become a fascinating but forgettable footnote in the annals of astronomy, a measurement anomaly, a set of coincidences that briefly made us dream of the impossible. But I don't believe it will be that way. And if you've made it this far in this video, you probably don't either. There's something else you need to know, something that hasn't been made public, but is being discussed at the highest levels of space agencies. After the pulse pattern of November 3 was detected, the Webb team performed an updated trajectory projection of 3I Atlas using the latest available astrometric measurements. And they discovered something disturbing. The object has reduced its speed, not drastically, but measurably, approximately 0.8% slower than when it was first detected. For a body in hyperbolic trajectory, traveling under the pure gravitational influence of the Sun, this is impossible. The speed should be increasing as it approaches perihelion, not decreasing. It's as if 3I Atlas were intentionally braking, as if it were adjusting its speed to remain in a specific position in space for a specific period of time, as if it were waiting. This information has not been officially confirmed. The data is preliminary, the margins of error are wide, and NASA has been extremely careful not to make public statements that could generate panic or uncontrolled speculation. But the information is circulating, and those who have access to it are worried. Because if an interstellar object can modify its trajectory, then it's not a comet, it's a spacecraft. And if it's a spacecraft, then the questions we must ask ourselves change completely. It's not what is 3I Atlas, but who sent it. It's not where does it come from, but what does it want. It's not how does it work, but why is it here, now, at this moment in our history. Let me know in the comments if you think humanity is ready for a revelation of this magnitude. Are we prepared to know we're not alone? In approximately 18 hours from this moment, if the Solar Laboratory's calculations are correct, a wave of magnetized plasma at temperatures of millions of degrees Celsius will reach the spatial coordinates 2.3 astronomical units from the Sun, in the region delimited by the constellations of Taurus and Orion from our terrestrial perspective. At that point in space, slowly rotating on its axis, emitting regular pulses of electromagnetic radiation, waiting with patience that defies all human logic, is 3I Atlas. And when the solar ejection reaches it, when billions of tons of charged particles envelop it in an embrace of invisible fire, we will know. We will know if this is truly a wandering chunk of ice and rock, or if it's something more, something that thinks, something that feels, something that communicates. The telescopes will be watching. Scientists will be analyzing every byte of information in real time. And somewhere on the planet, perhaps in a control room in Baltimore, or in an operations center in Pasadena, or in an observatory in the mountains of Chile, someone will see the first signal, the first change in the data, the first indication that 3I Atlas is responding. And in that moment, everything will change. Because we will no longer be alone in the universe, We will no longer be the only voice wondering if there's someone else out there listening. We will be the species that finally received an answer. Or maybe not. Maybe November 4 will pass without incident, and 3I, Atlas, will continue its journey toward the outer solar system, gradually moving away until it becomes another point of light lost among the stars. Another unsolved mystery in the infinite catalog of things we don't understand. Maybe this story will end with a sigh instead of a revelation. But even if that's the case, it will have been worth it. Because for a few brief days in November 2025, humanity looked toward the sky with renewed hope and curiosity, remembering that we are a species of explorers, of dreamers, of tireless seekers of answers to the biggest questions we can imagine. And those questions won't disappear. They will continue resonating in our minds, pushing us forward, toward the stars, toward the inevitable encounter with the unknown that awaits us somewhere in the future. Because if there's one lesson that 3I Atlas has taught us, it's this. The universe is stranger, more complex, more full of wonders than we ever imagined. And we're only beginning to scratch the surface of its secrets. So tomorrow, when the sun launches its flare toward the depths of space, when the electromagnetic storm travels through the vacuum seeking its distant target, think about this moment. Think about this solitary object floating in the darkness, patiently waiting its turn to speak. Think about all the unanswered questions, all the mysteries surrounding us, all the possibilities that open before us if only we have the courage to look. Because perhaps, just perhaps, 3I, Atlas didn't come to invade. It didn't come to destroy. It came to remind us of something we had forgotten, that we're not alone, that we never were, and that the cosmos is full of ancient voices calling to us from impossible distances, inviting us to join the greatest conversation of all. The conversation between the stars. The clock advances, the hours pass, and soon, very soon, we will know if this silent object traversing our solar system is the beginning of a new era for humanity, or simply another fascinating chapter in our long search for companionship in the infinite universe. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the real-time analysis of the November 4 event. I'll be covering every development, every new piece of information that comes to light. Comment below what you think will happen when that solar pulse reaches 3I, Atlas. Will we witness a simple physical reaction explainable by conventional science? Or will we be witnesses to the first intentional communication between humanity and something that came from the stars? Your opinion matters, because this is a story that belongs to all of us. And whatever the outcome, we'll discover it together, looking toward the same point in the sky, waiting for the answer that could change everything we think we know about our place in the cosmos.